The most basic of basic police procedures are routinely not followed in this case. What the heck is going on?
You took scrapings from both shirts. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
And then combined those together and submitted that as the quote unquote
Combined
debris that was assigned a new item number 7-18.18, correct?
Her report showed debris collection from the shirts. It turns out that the scrapings done from this gray shirt and the scrapings done from this orange shirt were combined together. What?
It's a photo of the brown paper bag that contains the long sleeve gray shirt as well as the orange t-shirt.
Please tell me it's not a Stop and
Mayor
Shop
Burch.
bag.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. An actual evidence bag. This is apparently what an evidence bag looks like. I note, for example, it does not say Stop and Shop on the side of it.
He asked her if she noted any bits of plastic or anything like that when she was scraping off these shirts to try and get fibers. I mean, if there were any chunks of plastic, surely she would have noticed that, right? Well, she said she didn't. She didn't notice any bits of plastic or anything like that.
Wow. Right? Actual evidence bag used by actual police in actual case. So they do know how to use an evidence bag.
And you did not note any debris item that was plastic or plasticine, anything like that, correct?
No, I did not make any kind of observations on the debris itself.
For instance, you wouldn't want to take the swabs that you so carefully utilized to swab an item of evidence and then, oops, drop it on the floor. You would have to discard that item and then start over, correct?
If a swab is dropped on the floor, we don't discard it. We would preserve it, but that would be a note that we would have to put in our file, and that, yes, that swab would not be tested any further.
Right, because of the possibility of cross-contamination.
Correct.
And
She didn't want to answer that.
at least according to the evidence bag, those two shirts were in the custody and control of which trooper before you got them? And it
Of course,
also
it's
has a
Proctor.
description of what's in the bag, and it shows both the orange t-shirt and the gray sweatshirt collected together and bagged together, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And Jackson asked her if all the evidence was given to her on March 14th, and she said no. She said the taillights and the items from the vehicle she took with her, plus the swabs from the Solo Cup.
Bookmark this in your brain. She took the evidence that she collected from the car from Sallyport Garage. It'll be important with the next witness.
Yeah, again, not necessarily ideal. You know, where did the thing came from might be helpful information, but sadly I had no idea. It was just evidence came from somewhere that's in a bag, but that might be important information, but not documented in any way, apparently. No reason to tell the lab that, I guess. They'll figure it out.
March 14th, more than 6 weeks after Officer John O'Keefe's murder. That's when the clothing was turned into the crime lab. More than 6 weeks later.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
What is that document, the second document that I just handed?
This is a printed chain of custody report from our laboratory information management system.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to mark the evidence submission form for submission 7, 2-page document, if I could have that marked next in order.
Oh, I
And
can't.
then
Can we see it, please?
Is there an objection, Mr. Lally?
Yes, to both.
You're going to
So
object?
the objection sustained unless you want to convince me
What?
otherwise.
I'll have a mark for ID for
Okay.
the time being. That's fine.
Objection sustained unless you want to convince me otherwise. Okay, Judge. Not important for us to see chain of custody, or are you just saying that this witness is not going to be able to authenticate this because Proctor is going to need to authenticate it because he's the one who signed it, and yet maybe the Commonwealth isn't going to call Proctor. Really? Is that the game we're going to play? Okay.
It's surprising and irregular that it wasn't the prosecution to introduce these things before we even saw any of this evidence. That chain of custody is really important. So Jackson is going to introduce it now. Well, you know, Lally objected. What? And the judge sustained the objection.
At least according to the evidence bag, those two shirts were in the custody and control of which trooper before you got them?
Trooper Proctor collected the evidence according
Of course
to
he
the
did.
Thank you.
Of course he did.
So they go through the clear plastic and what fit and what didn't. And the way they spoke was like this.
So amongst item 3-1, piece A and piece B fit together mechanically, and then piece A and piece F fit together mechanically.
7-5, so A, B, and C, is that correct as well? And with reference to item 7-6, there were two pieces A and B within that, is that correct? Now turning your attention to item 7-8, to recall how many pieces were contained within that.
So pieces C and D were found to fit together mechanically, and then pieces E and F were found to fit together mechanically.
Well, how many pieces were contained again within item 7-10? And with reference to 7-10, how many pieces? And with reference to item 7-11, how many pieces contained within that? Now, with reference to item 7-12, how many pieces were contained within that?
So pieces B, C, D, F, and K all fit together. Pieces E and I fit together, and pieces M and N fit together.
Now, turning your attention to item 7-13, how many pieces were contained within item 7-13? Turning your attention to item 7-14, how many pieces were contained within that? And turning your attention to item 7-15, how many pieces were contained within that?
So piece F and piece H were found to fit together.
And turning your attention to item 7-16, how many pieces were contained within 7-16?
Blah, 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 blah. It would make sense if you kept track of each 7-whatever and could remember what that was. But it's going to be a lot easier for somebody to follow if they have the report in front of them while they listen to the testimony. The reason she testifies this way is because it's specific and it's clear, technically, as to what piece labeled that she's talking about. But for the casual listener or the jury, this is all gonna mush together in their heads. And this is not the fault of the witness. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing.
So with regard to the orange t-shirt and the gray long sleeve shirt, those were given separate item numbers, and you examined what was the debris allegedly from those shirts, right? 7-18.18, correct?
Correct.
One category was dirt and debris, correct?
Yes.
You did not test the dirt and debris, correct?
Correct.
Another category was, or were, I should say, several apparent hairs.
So starting with what
yes.
they didn't look
And
at.
you did not test those hairs, correct?
Correct.
So when those several pieces of apparent red plastic and one piece of apparent clear plastic came into your possession, those pieces were obviously not embedded in either shirt when you examined them, correct?
Correct.
And again, that's because you never took possession of any shirt in this case, correct?
Correct.
And so it goes without saying that you never saw those pieces on either the orange shirt or the gray long sleeve shirt, correct?
I did not.
So between January 29th of 2022 and March 14th of 2022, you do not know what Michael Proctor did or didn't do with the orange t-shirt and gray long sleeve shirt, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No.
I don't know.
How would this witness have any idea?
Okay.
And that's
Now, I'd like
That's
to
his
discuss
point.
with you, if I might,
Yannetti's point is that
Michael Proctor's submission.
Yannetti's point is that Proctor had the taillight pieces and the shirt. So what was going on with the taillight pieces and the shirt? I think Yannetti's also using this to force the state's hand a little bit, so they have to call Proctor because there's no getting around some of this.
Of the pieces of plastic that you've testified about. Your lab received from Michael Proctor several different
Also,
evidence bags.
Many of you have asked when the indictment for murder was elevated for Karen Reed. It was June 9th, 2022. So it was before all of this evidence was analyzed.
Reed was already charged. And why would you have evidence like this and not submit it immediately? Why? Why? And I'm going to remind you that the last witness from the lab said that the two shirts came in the same evidence bag. She also said she wasn't assigned this case until much later. And he points out here, this top left corner here, there is still a missing piece of taillight, and that was never found. Those pieces are still missing. They found everything for this taillight except this one piece here. And you know, if Reed broke this taillight elsewhere, it wouldn't be found at Fairview.
I have a sneaky suspicion I know where those pieces of plastic are. The clear ones. See that pile of snow up against the fence? I bet they didn't look there, did they?
That vehicle towards the top, that's your vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And is this around the time that you would have been leaving your brother's house on January 29th?
Yes.
The next witness was Christine Henley. And of course, again, no mention of chain of custody prior to it getting to the lab. When the lab is given tainted evidence in the first place, no amount of care from these people is going to fix that. So the chain of custody within the lab setting is great. It sounds great. And that's a misdirect. And the misdirection bothers me because this is the prosecution. This is not the defense playing games. This is the prosecutor. And I'm going to hang on to this belief, I think, until I die, that a prosecutor is supposed to work for the people. It's not about conviction at all costs, or at least it shouldn't be.
And then the two of the pieces from item 3-3, or one of the pieces, excuse me, piece E from 3-3, which was from the bumper of the defendant's vehicle, was consistent with a piece of clear glass from 7-14, which was found on the ground, correct?
Blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
Now, Ms. Hanley, in addition to that trace analysis that you performed with regard to the glass pieces, what, if any, other, excuse me, additional examination did you do with regard to items of debris?
Sure. So I also examined item 3-1 and 7-18.18.
Blah, 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 blah. None of the items on Reed's bumper, none of that glass matched the drinking glass found at the scene. The glass on her bumper, not a match. That is a big deal. The cup was not found to match anything on the bumper. That single piece of glass was not a match for the cup or the 9 pieces found at the scene. The only match from the bumper was to that single piece of glass later found by Proctor.
I get it. It was proctored.